The cold metal corridors of Outpost Theta 9 echoed with each footstep as Jake Morrison led his team deeper into the abandoned station. Dust floated in the beams of their flashlights, and the air tasted stale despite their breathing masks. The station had been dead for decades, left to rot in the outer edges of human space after the Krethian Empire conquered Earth 30 years ago. Jake was tired. Everyone was tired. The rebellion had been fighting for so long with so little to show for it. They had small weapons, older ships, and barely enough people to crew them. The Krethians had advanced technology, massive fleets, and complete control over every human world. This salvage mission was just another desperate attempt to find something useful in the ruins of humanity's past. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange on the lower levels," Kevin Brooks said, staring at his scanner. The engineer had been with Jake since the beginning, back when the rebellion was just 20 people hiding in asteroid mines. Now they had thousands, but it still felt like throwing rocks at a mountain. "Strange how?" Jake asked. "Power readings. Very faint, but they're there. Something down there is still active." Amy Rodriguez, their best pilot, checked her own device. "That's impossible. This station was abandoned in 2815. Nothing could still have power after 30 years. "Let's check it out," Jake said. They had come all this way. Might as well see what was down there. They descended 5 levels through emergency stairwells. The station groaned around them, metal stressed by decades of neglect and the vacuum of space. Lisa Chang, their intelligence officer, kept watch on their rear. She was always careful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. It was why she was still alive when so many others had died. The lower level was different. The walls here were thicker, reinforced with materials Jake didn't recognize. Heavy blast doors blocked their path, sealed tight. Kevin worked on the control panel while the others waited. Minutes passed. Then something clicked, and the doors began to move. What lay beyond took their breath away. The hangar stretched out before them, massive beyond belief. 12 warships sat in perfect rows, each one held in a shimmering field of blue light. The vessels were enormous, dwarfing anything the rebellion had ever seen. Their hulls were smooth and dark, with lines that spoke of speed and power. Weapons bristled from every angle. These were not transport ships or cargo haulers. These were weapons of war. "What are those?" Amy whispered. Kevin was already running forward, his scanner forgotten. He approached the nearest ship, a vessel nearly 2 kilometers long with a hull that seemed to absorb light. "I don't believe it. These are Clone Wars vessels. Titan-class carriers, Warden-class destroyers, and that one." He pointed to the largest ship at the center of the hangar. "That's a Valkyrie-class dreadnought. I've only seen pictures in history files." Jake knew about the Clone Wars, every human did. It was taught as a warning, a reminder of what happened when humanity turned its weapons on itself. In 2387, Earth's factions had fought each other with terrible weapons and armies of cloned soldiers. Millions died. Entire cities were erased. The war had nearly destroyed human civilization before peace was finally achieved. All the Clone Wars technology had supposedly been destroyed afterward, buried and forgotten. But here it was, hidden away on a forgotten station, waiting. "Why are they still powered?" Lisa asked. "How is that possible?" Kevin climbed up to one of the ships and found an access panel. "Stasis fields. These ships are in perfect preservation. The fields are powered by quantum batteries that can last for centuries. Someone wanted to make sure these vessels survived." Jake walked to the dreadnought, the one Kevin had called a Valkyrie class. The name was painted on its hull in faded letters, Resolute. He placed his hand on the metal, and it was cold to the touch. This ship had fought in the Clone Wars. It had probably killed thousands, maybe millions. And now it sat here silent and waiting. "Can we use them?" Jake asked. Kevin was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but there's a problem." Clone Wars vessels had advanced security systems. They required biometric authorization from their crews. DNA scans, neural patterns, the works. Without the original crews, these ships are just very large and very expensive statues. "The original crews are dead," Amy said. "They've been dead for over 400 years. "Then we find another way," Jake said. He wasn't giving up, not now. Not when they had found something that could actually make a difference. "Kevin, download everything you can from these ships. Lisa, search the station records. I want to know who put these ships here and why. Amy, get back to our ship and contact the council. Tell them what we found." They worked through the night. Kevin connected to the ship's systems and began pulling data. Lisa found an old office 3 levels up and started going through dusty computer files. Amy made the dangerous journey back through the station to their small transport vessel. What they discovered changed everything. The ships had been hidden here by a group of Clone Wars veterans who couldn't bring themselves to destroy such powerful weapons. They feared that humanity might need them again someday. They had left detailed records, including DNA profiles of every crew member who had served on these vessels. More importantly, Kevin found something else. The ship's artificial intelligence systems were still active, running on minimal power inside their stasis fields. These AI were not simple programs. They were learning machines designed to adapt and grow, and they contained backup copies of their crew's neural patterns preserved in quantum storage. "This is incredible," Kevin said, his voice shaking. "If we can find living descendants of the original crews, people with close enough genetic markers, we might be able to unlock these ships. And the AI systems could help train new crews using the knowledge of the veterans." Jake looked at the Resolute again. It was a monster. A weapon from humanity's darkest time. But the Krethians had monsters too, and they were using them to enslave his people. Sometimes you had to fight monsters with monsters. "Start searching," Jake ordered. "Find every descendant you can. Search the labor camps, the colonies, everywhere. If there's even a chance we can get these ships operational, we have to try." Lisa looked worried. "Jake, these ships nearly destroyed humanity once. Are we sure we want to wake them up?" Jake met her eyes. "The Krethians have taken everything from us. Our worlds, our freedom, our future. These ships might be our only chance to get it all back. I know it's dangerous. I know it's risky. But doing nothing is worse." They spent 3 more days on the station, documenting everything and preparing the hangar for transport. The rebellion would need to move the ships to a more secure location. They would need engineers, technicians, and volunteers brave enough to attempt the crew integration process. As Jake took one last look at the silent warships before leaving, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Real hope. The kind that made your chest tight and your hands shake. The Krethians had conquered humanity with superior technology and overwhelming force. But they had never faced the weapons of the Clone Wars. They had never seen what humanity could do when truly desperate. That was about to change. 3 months had passed since the discovery at Outpost Theta 9. The rebellion had moved the 12 warships to a hidden base inside a hollowed asteroid in the Kepler belt. Engineers worked day and night to understand the ancient technology, while Lisa's intelligence network searched across occupied space for descendants of the Clone Wars crews. Finding them was harder than anyone expected. The Krethians had scattered humanity across dozens of worlds, breaking up families and erasing records. Many bloodlines had ended during the invasion. Others had been lost to time, their family histories forgotten after 4 centuries. But slowly they found candidates. Daniel Hayes was the first. He worked in a Krethian mining facility on Callisto, hauling ore 16 hours a day in conditions that killed most humans within 5 years. His genetic profile matched Captain Victoria Cross, the legendary commander of the Resolute. The match was not perfect, but it was close enough. 78% compatibility, Kevin said. It might be enough. The rescue team pulled Daniel out during a shift change. He was thin and scarred, his hands rough from years of hard labor. When they told him why they wanted him, he laughed. It was a bitter sound. "You want me to become some kind of ghost soldier?" Daniel asked. "Merge my mind with someone who died hundreds of years ago." "We want you to help us win our freedom," Jake said. They sat in a small room on the asteroid base, just the 2 of them. "I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. We don't know exactly what will happen when you interface with the ship's AI. But if it works, you'll have the knowledge and experience of one of humanity's greatest military commanders. And if it doesn't work, you could die. Or worse." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at his hands, at the scars and calluses. "I was going to die in that mine anyway. At least this way, my death might mean something." They found others. Christine Palmer was hiding on Mars, living under a false identity and working as a shuttle mechanic. Her genetic profile matched Commander Rachel Stone, one of the best pilots in Clone Wars history. Greg Turner came from Europa, a teacher who had been secretly running an underground school for human children. His DNA connected him to Admiral Peter Kane, a tactical genius who had won impossible battles. In total, Lisa found 19 candidates across occupied space. 14 agreed to attempt the integration. 5 refused, too afraid of losing themselves to the ghosts of the past. The first integration attempt took place on a cold morning in the asteroid base's medical bay. Daniel Hayes lay on a medical table, while Kevin and his team connected neural interface cables to his head. The cables ran to a console that linked directly to the Resolute's AI core. "Starting the process now," Kevin said. His fingers moved across the controls. "Neural pattern transfer beginning." At first, nothing happened. Daniel lay still, his eyes closed. Monitors showed his brain activity increasing but remaining stable. Then suddenly his whole body went rigid. His eyes snapped open, but they were unfocused, staring at something no one else could see. Images flashed through his mind. Battles in space, ships exploding, orders being given. He saw through someone else's eyes, felt their fear and determination. He was Victoria Cross, commanding the Resolute in the final battle of the Clone Wars. He was also himself, Daniel Hayes, watching these memories like a film. Then the two began to merge. It was like drowning and learning to breathe at the same time. Victoria's 400 years of experience crashed into Daniel's mind like a wave. Combat tactics, ship operations, crew management, political strategy, but also personal memories. Her childhood on Earth, her first command, the friends she had lost. The terrible things she had done in the name of victory. Daniel screamed. The medical team moved to disconnect him, but Jake held up a hand. "Wait," the screaming stopped. Daniel's body relaxed. His eyes closed again, and for a moment everyone thought they had lost him. Then he opened his eyes and they were clear, aware, different. "Commander Morrison," Daniel said, sitting up slowly. His voice had changed, carrying a confidence and authority that hadn't been there before. "The Resolute is ready for activation. I recommend we begin crew integration immediately and run full system diagnostics within 48 hours. Kevin stared at him. It worked. It actually worked. But success came with a price. Not everyone survived the integration. 2 candidates died when their brains couldn't handle the neural pattern merger. 3 more fell into comas from which they never woke. The survivors changed in ways that were hard to predict. Some became quiet and withdrawn, struggling with memories of battles they had never fought. Others embraced their new knowledge eagerly, almost too eagerly. Christine Palmer emerged from her integration with a wild look in her eyes. She had gained Rachel Stone's piloting skills, but also her aggression. The first thing she did was demand access to a fighter craft. "I need to fly," she said. "I need to feel it again." Greg Turner became cautious and calculating, constantly analyzing every situation for tactical advantages. He saw threats everywhere, just as Peter Kane had during the paranoid final years of the Clone Wars. Jake watched his people change and wondered if he was creating soldiers or ghosts. But the rebellion needed these ships. The Crethians were tightening their grip on human space, and conventional resistance was failing. Every day more humans died in labor camps or execution yards, so he made his choice. Late one night, Jake walked alone to the Resolute's docking bay. He stood before the massive ship, looking up at its dark hull. Kevin had discovered Jake's own genetic connection to Victoria Cross. They were distant cousins, separated by 14 generations. The compatibility was strong, 83%. Jake had ordered others to risk their minds for the rebellion. Now it was his turn. The integration process was worse than he imagined. Victoria Cross had been brilliant, ruthless, and haunted by her choices. She had ordered strikes that killed millions. She had sacrificed entire fleets to win strategic advantages. She had done terrible things because she believed they were necessary. And now Jake carried those memories. He remembered giving the order to use biological weapons on a rebel colony. He remembered watching cities burn from orbit. He remembered the faces of crew members he had sent to die. But he also gained her tactical genius, her ability to see patterns in chaos, her understanding of how to win impossible battles. When Jake opened his eyes after the integration, he was still himself. But he was also more. He carried Victoria Cross inside him, her knowledge and her guilt. "How do you feel?" Kevin asked. Jake stood slowly, testing his balance. His body felt different, moved differently. Victoria had been a soldier, trained in combat since childhood. Her muscle memory was now his. "I feel ready," Jake said. "Get the others. It's time to activate the ships. Over the next week, they brought the Clone Wars vessels online one by one. The process was delicate and dangerous. Each ship required its integrated crew to interface directly with its AI core, establishing a neural link that allowed human intuition to guide machine precision. 6 ships successfully activated. The Resolute naturally, with Daniel Hayes as its commander and Jake as fleet admiral. 2 Titan-class carriers, Infinite Dawn and Morning Star, commanded by Christine Palmer and a former soldier named Carl White. 3 Warden-class destroyers for support and screening. The other 6 ships remained dormant. They didn't have enough compatible descendants, and forcing the integration with low compatibility candidates had proven fatal. But 6 ships were enough. 6 Clone Wars vessels with their self-repairing hulls, adaptive AI systems, and experienced crews. 6 weapons that could match anything the Krathians had. Jake stood on the Resolute's bridge for the first time, and it felt like coming home. Victoria's memories guided him to the command chair. He knew where every control was, understood every system. The ship felt like an extension of his own body. "All ships report ready," Lisa said from her station. She had refused integration, choosing to remain fully human. Someone needed to remember who they had been, she said. Someone needed to stay grounded. "Then let's see what these ships can do," Jake said. "Plot a course for the outer system. We need to run combat drills before engaging the enemy." As the Resolute's engines came to life for the first time in 4 centuries, Jake felt both hope and fear. They had awakened powerful weapons, but weapons from humanity's darkest hour. The crews carried the memories of people who had nearly destroyed their own civilization. The question now was whether they could use that power without becoming the monsters they fought. The Rebellion's hidden base buzzed with activity as crews prepared the 6 activated warships for their first real mission. Engineers worked around the clock to adapt Clone Wars technology to fight Krathian vessels. The ancient weapons had been designed to destroy human ships, not alien craft with different shield frequencies and hull compositions. Kevin discovered the ships could learn. Their AI systems analyzed every piece of Krathian technology the Rebellion had captured, adapting weapons and tactics in real time. It was both impressive and unsettling how quickly the vessels absorbed new information. Jake planned their first strike carefully. The target was Zaros Prime, a fortress world the Krathians used as their regional command center. Taking it would free 16 human colonies and disrupt enemy operations across an entire sector. But it was also heavily defended by at least 40 Krathian warships and multiple orbital defense platforms. "This is suicide," one of the council members said during the planning session. 6 ships against their entire fortress fleet? 6 Clone Wars vessels, Jake corrected. He pulled up tactical displays showing simulations Kevin had run. "These ships are faster, more maneuverable, and have self-repairing hulls. The Krathians have never faced anything like them. Neither have we," Lisa pointed out. "We don't really know what these ships can do in combat." She was right, and everyone knew it. They had run drills, practiced maneuvers, and fired the weapons at target drones. But they had never fought a real battle with these vessels. They were gambling everything on untested technology and crews with memories that weren't entirely their own. The mission began badly. As the fleet prepared to depart, one of the Warden-class destroyers experienced a catastrophic system failure. Its AI core crashed and emergency alerts flooded through the ship. The crew barely evacuated before the vessel's reactor went critical. They lost the ship and 37 people in the explosion. Kevin investigated and found evidence of sabotage in the AI core's code. Someone had planted a virus designed to trigger once the ship left port. But who and why? "We don't have time to figure this out now," Jake said. "We move forward with 5 ships. Delay means the Krathians might discover our base." They jumped to Zaros Prime with their reduced fleet. The carriers Infinite Dawn and Morning Star led the formation, their fighter bays loaded with over 200 small craft. The 3 remaining destroyers provided escort. The Resolute took point, its massive weapon systems primed and ready. The Krathian fleet was waiting for them. Sensors showing 43 enemy warships, Lisa reported from her station. They knew we were coming. Jake felt Victoria Cross's tactical knowledge activate in his mind. The old commander had fought countless battles, and her experience flowed through him like water. He saw the battlefield not as chaos but as patterns, probabilities, and opportunities. "They have a spy in the rebellion," Jake said calmly. "Lisa, add that to your list of problems to solve. Right now we fight. The Crethean fleet opened fire first. Energy beams and missile salvos crossed the space between fleets at the speed of light. The Resolute's shields flared as enemy fire struck them, but the ancient technology held. Jake felt the ship around him, every system and weapon extension of his will. Return fire. All batteries, he ordered. The Resolute's main gun spoke with a voice like thunder. Massive energy beams lanced out, striking two Crethean cruisers. The enemy shields collapsed under the assault, and the cruisers exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The other Clone Wars vessels opened fire as well, their weapons tearing through enemy formations with devastating precision. Christine Palmer launched her fighters from Infinite Dawn, and they swarmed across the battlefield like angry hornets. She led the first squadron herself, her piloting skills enhanced by Rachel Stone's centuries of experience. The fighters moved in patterns the Cretheans had never seen, exploiting weaknesses in their defensive formations. But the Cretheans adapted quickly. They refocused their fire on the carriers, recognizing them as the primary threat. Morningstar took heavy damage, its shields failing under concentrated bombardment. The carrier tried to retreat, but 3 Crethean destroyers pursued it. Morningstar is in trouble, Lisa reported. They're requesting support. Jake had to make a choice. Send help and weaken the main attack, or let Morningstar fall and maintain the assault. Victoria Cross's memories whispered to him. She had made this kind of choice before. She had sacrificed ships and crews to win battles. It was the cold mathematics of war. But Jake was not Victoria Cross. Not entirely. Resolute will break off and support Morningstar, he ordered. Christine, your fighters screen the other ships. We're not leaving anyone behind. The Resolute turned and accelerated toward the embattled carrier. The massive dreadnought crashed into the pursuing Crethean destroyers like a hammer, its weapons firing at point-blank range. 2 enemy ships exploded immediately. The third tried to flee but couldn't escape the Resolute's range. Morningstar, get your shields back online and return to the fight, Jake commanded. We're not done here. The battle raged for 3 hours. Ships on both sides died in fire and violence. The rebels fought with desperate courage while the Cretheans pressed their numerical advantage. Space filled with debris and radiation. Then something changed. The Clone Wars AI systems began to predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. They learned from each engagement, analyzing Crethean tactics and adapting their responses. What had started as a brutal slugging match became a surgical operation as the rebel ships exploited every weakness in the enemy formation. Greg Turner, commanding one of the destroyers, noticed the pattern first. Their command ship is coordinating the entire fleet. Take it out and they'll lose cohesion. Jake saw it too. The Crethean flagship sat in the center of their formation, protected by layers of escorts. Getting to it would cost them dearly, but if they succeeded, the entire enemy fleet might collapse. All ships concentrate fire on the flagship, Jake ordered. We end this now. The rebel fleet drove forward like a spear. The Resolute absorbed incredible punishment as it pushed through enemy lines, its self-repairing hull knitting itself back together, even as new damage appeared. The carriers launched every fighter they had, and the destroyers provided covering fire. Christine's squadron reached the flagship first. The fighters swarmed around it, targeting weapon systems and shield generators. The Crethean point defenses shot down dozens of fighters, but more kept coming. Then the Resolute arrived, and its main guns fired at the flagship's exposed bridge. The Crethean command ship broke apart, its hull splitting down the middle. Without their flagship's coordination, the enemy fleet faltered. Ships broke formation, some retreating while others fought on without direction. The rebels pressed their advantage and the Crethean defense collapsed. When the battle finally ended, the rebel fleet had won. But the victory was costly. They had destroyed or routed the enemy fleet, but Morningstar was crippled, 1 destroyer was destroyed, and they had lost over half their fighters. More than 300 rebels were dead, and twice that many injured. Jake walked through the Resolute's corridors after the battle, seeing the damage and the exhausted crew. These people had fought brilliantly, but they had paid a terrible price. He felt Victoria Cross's satisfaction at the tactical victory, warring with his own horror at the cost. In the medical bay, he found wounded fighters being treated by overwhelmed doctors. A young pilot, barely 20 years old, had lost both legs when her fighter was hit. She looked up at Jake with pain-filled eyes. "Did we win, sir?" she asked. "Yes," Jake said quietly. "We won." But looking at her broken body and thinking of all the dead, he wondered what winning really meant. The Clone Wars vessels had proven their worth, but at what cost? How many more would die before humanity was free? That night, Kevin approached Jake with disturbing news. He had analyzed the destroyed destroyer's AI core and found something troubling. The virus hadn't been planted by a spy. It had been put there by the ship's original crew before they entered stasis. They sabotaged their own ships? Jake asked in disbelief. Not all of them, but some, Kevin explained. I've found similar code in other vessels. It's set to trigger randomly, ensuring these ships could never be fully deployed. The Clone Wars crews didn't trust their own weapons. They were afraid of what they had created. Jake understood that fear now. He carried Victoria Cross's memories, including her guilt over the weapons she had unleashed. The Clone Wars had taught humanity a terrible lesson about the price of advanced warfare. And now they were learning that lesson again. Can you remove the sabotage code? Jake asked. Yes, but it will take time.
And Jake, there's something else.
Some of the clone crew members are showing signs of mental instability. The same problems that plagued the Clone Wars are appearing again. Jake looked out at the stars through a viewport. They had won one battle, but the war was far from over. And the weapons they used to fight for freedom might destroy them in the end. News of the victory at Zeros Prime spread across occupied space like wildfire. For 30 years, humanity had lived under Krethian rule with no hope of liberation. Now suddenly the impossible seemed possible. The rebellion had warships that could match the Empire's fleet. Freedom was no longer just a dream. Volunteers flooded rebel recruitment centers. Thousands of humans who had accepted their subjugation found courage again. The freed colonies around Zeros Prime became staging grounds for a larger campaign. Weapons factories that had served the Krethians were retooled to supply the rebellion. Even the enslaved workers on other worlds began to resist, slowing production and sabotaging equipment. But the Krethians were not idle. They recognized the threat and responded with brutal efficiency. Labor camps instituted collective punishment, executing hundreds for the actions of a few rebels. Orbital bombardments destroyed suspected rebel strongholds, killing thousands of civilians. The Empire wanted to break humanity's spirit before it could truly rise. Jake stood in the command center of their asteroid base, watching reports stream in from across human space. Some were encouraging. Rebel cells were winning small victories, capturing supplies and freeing prisoners. Others were heartbreaking. Entire families executed for hiding rebel sympathizers. Villages burned to ash as examples to others. We need to move faster, Christine said during a council meeting. The pilot had become more aggressive since her integration, pushing for immediate action. Every day we wait, more humans die. And if we move too fast, we lose everything, Lisa countered. She had been investigating the sabotage of their destroyed destroyer and found troubling connections. We still have a security problem. Someone fed the Krethians information about our attack on Zeros Prime. They knew we were coming. Jake had been thinking about this constantly. The spy could be anyone, a rebel plant, a compromised crew member, or even one of the integrated veterans whose memories might not be entirely loyal. Trust was becoming a luxury they couldn't afford. Then Lisa brought them news that changed everything. Her intelligence network had captured a Krethian officer during a raid on a supply depot. Under interrogation, the officer revealed something that made Jake's blood run cold. The Empire was building siege platforms in orbit around Earth. What are siege platforms? Greg Turner asked. Lisa pulled up images on the display. Massive space stations bristled with weapons, each one capable of devastating a planet's surface. They're designed to render worlds uninhabitable. If the rebellion continues to threaten Krethian control, they'll activate these platforms and destroy Earth's atmosphere. 20 billion humans still live on Earth. The Empire is willing to kill them all to maintain control. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They had weeks, maybe a month before the platforms became operational. If they didn't act soon, Earth would die. How many platforms are there? Jake asked. 12 evenly spaced in geosynchronous orbit. Each one is heavily defended. Taking them out would require a direct assault on Earth itself, through the full might of the Empire's occupation fleet. Kevin studied the data. The platforms are still under construction. Their shields and weapons aren't fully operational yet, but our intelligence suggests they'll be complete within 30 days. Jake felt Victoria Cross's tactical mind analyzing the problem. A direct assault on Earth was exactly what the Krethians expected. They would be prepared with hundreds of warships and defensive systems. A conventional attack would fail. But the Clone Wars had taught Victoria that conventional warfare was for conventional enemies. "We don't attack Earth directly," Jake said slowly. "We force the Empire to make a choice." He outlined his plan. The rebellion would launch simultaneous strikes across multiple systems, stretching the Krithian fleet thin. While the Empire scrambled to respond, a small force would infiltrate Earth's orbit and destroy the siege platforms from within. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it might be their only chance. "We'll need more ships," Christine said. 5 vessels aren't enough for a campaign like this." Kevin had been working on that problem. The remaining 6 Clone Wars ships in their hangar were still dormant, lacking compatible crew members to activate them. But he had discovered something interesting in the ship's systems. The AI cores could operate independently for limited periods, like drones following pre-programmed commands. They wouldn't be as effective as crewed ships, but they could serve as decoys and support vessels. "I can wake up 3 more ships in AI-only mode," Kevin explained. "They'll follow basic commands and can draw enemy fire. It's not ideal, but it gives us 8 vessels instead of 5. Over the next 2 weeks, the rebellion prepared for the largest operation in its history. Jake divided their forces into 3 groups. Christine would lead 1 carrier and 2 destroyers to strike the Krithian shipyards at Proxima Centauri. Greg would take another group to liberate Titan Station, where 50,000 human prisoners awaited execution. Jake would lead the Resolute and the remaining ships directly to Earth. The campaign began with coordinated strikes across 6 systems. The Krithians, believing the rebellion would target Earth immediately, had concentrated their fleet there. Now they scrambled to respond to attacks on multiple fronts, dividing their forces to protect vital assets. Christine's assault on Proxima Centauri was brutal and efficient. The shipyards were lightly defended, expecting the Empire's fleet to provide protection. The rebel ships swept in fast, destroyed the construction facilities, and escaped before reinforcements arrived. The Krithians lost a year's worth of ship production in less than 3 hours. Greg's liberation of Titan Station was more complicated. The station was a converted asteroid where the Empire kept its most dangerous prisoners. Thousands of rebels, scientists, and political dissidents were scheduled for execution within days. The assault had to be precise to avoid killing the people they were trying to save. Greg used his tactical knowledge to identify weaknesses in the station's defenses. His ships targeted specific sections, creating breaches that allowed boarding teams to infiltrate. The fighting was close and desperate, but after 6 hours of combat, the station fell. Over 50,000 prisoners were freed, many of whom immediately joined the rebellion. While these victories unfolded, Jake approached Earth with the Resolute and 3 AI-controlled ships. The journey was tense. They had to avoid Krithian patrols and pass through multiple security checkpoints using captured access codes. Lisa's intelligence work made this possible, but one mistake would alert the entire fleet. They reached Earth's outer orbit and saw their home world for the first time in decades. The planet looked different. The Krithians had strip-mined entire continents and built massive industrial complexes. The atmosphere was hazier, polluted by 30 years of unregulated extraction. Cities that Jake remembered from his childhood were ruins or completely gone. 12 siege platforms confirmed, Lisa reported. They're in final construction phases. Weapons are online, but shield generators are still being installed. This was their window. Jake sent the AI-controlled ships forward as decoys, while the Resolute used its stealth systems to approach one of the platforms. They had to destroy all 12, and they had to do it quietly. If the Krithians realized what was happening, they might activate the platforms early. Christine arrived with infiltration teams. Her pilots were the best, enhanced by Clone Wars memories and trained for exactly this kind of mission. They flew small craft through Earth's orbital traffic, disguised as supply shuttles. Each team targeted a different platform. The infiltrations were delicate work. The teams had to reach each platform's core, plant explosives, and escape before the Krithians noticed. Christine led one team herself, her pilot reflexes and combat experience making her invaluable. She moved through the platform's corridors with deadly efficiency, neutralizing guards and bypassing security systems. But something went wrong on Platform 7. A security patrol discovered the infiltration team and raised the alarm. Suddenly, all 12 platforms went on high alert. The Krithian fleet, realizing they had been fooled, began racing back toward Earth. "We're out of time," Jake said. "Detonate what we have and get everyone out." 9 of the 12 platforms exploded, their cores destroyed by rebel charges. But 3 remained operational, and the Crethean fleet was minutes away. Jake had to make a decision. Retreat and let those 3 platforms survive, or stay and fight with no hope of victory. Then Kevin contacted him from the asteroid base with urgent news. While examining the remaining Clone Wars ships, he had discovered the vessel's ultimate weapon. The original crews had installed self-destruct systems powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. They were designed as a last resort, a way to ensure these ships could never fall into enemy hands. 3 AI-controlled ships. 3 remaining siege platforms. The math was simple and terrible. Jake gave the order. The 3 AI-controlled vessels broke formation and accelerated toward the remaining platforms. The ship's AI systems understood what was happening. They accepted their mission without question, just as they had been programmed to do centuries ago. The Crethean fleet arrived just as the AI ships reached the platforms. The vessels detonated simultaneously, each explosion large enough to... The final assault on Earth began 3 weeks after the destruction of the siege platforms. The rebellion had grown stronger with each victory, but so had the Crethean response. The Empire pulled fleets from across the galaxy to defend their hold on humanity's homeworld. Over 200 warships now orbited Earth, backed by defensive stations and mobile fortresses. Jake stood on the Resolute's bridge and studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet was massive, outnumbering them 40-1. Any conventional attack would be suicide. But they had come too far to turn back now. Billions of humans on Earth and across the colonies were waiting for liberation. Kevin had completed repairs on the remaining Clone Wars vessels. They now had 8 operational ships, 2 carriers, 4 destroyers, and 2 dreadnoughts, including the Resolute. The crews were experienced now, hardened by months of combat. The integrated veterans and their modern counterparts had learned to work together, their combined knowledge making them formidable. But Jake knew numbers mattered. 8 ships against 200 was impossible odds, even with Clone Wars technology. "We need an edge," Christine said during the final planning session. She had become Jake's most trusted advisor, her aggressive instincts balanced by Rachel Stone's tactical wisdom. "Something that will break their formation before they can overwhelm us." Lisa provided that edge. Her intelligence network had discovered that the Crethean Empire's control over Earth relied on a central command station called the World Breaker. This massive vessel coordinated all occupation forces, maintained communication networks, and controlled the Empire's military assets. Destroying it would throw the enemy fleet into chaos. "The World Breaker is at the center of their formation," Lisa explained, highlighting the massive ship on the display. "It's the size of a small moon and protected by 50 capital ships. Getting to it will cost us everything." Jake felt Victoria Cross's memories stirring. She had faced similar situations during the Clone Wars, battles where victory required impossible sacrifices. He pushed those thoughts away. This time would be different. It had to be. The rebellion divided its forces into 3 groups. Christine would lead both carriers and launch fighter strikes to draw enemy attention. Greg would command 3 destroyers in a flanking maneuver to destroy the defensive stations. Jake would take the Resolute and 1 other dreadnought straight toward the World Breaker. Before the battle, Jake visited the Resolute's clone production facilities. Kevin had activated them at minimal capacity to replace crew losses. Rows of tanks held growing clones, empty vessels waiting to be filled with purpose. It reminded Jake of everything dangerous about Clone Wars technology. "These people aren't real yet," Kevin said, noticing Jake's discomfort. "They have no memories, no consciousness. They're just biological machines until we integrate them with training protocols." "That's what the Clone Wars general said too," Jake replied. "Before those biological machines became soldiers who couldn't tell the difference between orders and their own thoughts." Kevin was quiet for a moment. "We can shut it down after the battle. Destroy the cloning technology like we should have centuries ago." Jake nodded. That was the plan. Win the war, free humanity, and make sure these weapons could never be used again. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. The rebel fleet jumped into the system and immediately came under fire. Energy beams and missiles filled space as the Crethean defense fleet activated. The Clone Wars vessels accelerated to attack speed, their enhanced engines pushing them faster than any Crethean ship could match. Christine's carriers launched every fighter they had. Over 300 small craft swarmed across the battlefield, harassing enemy ships and drawing their fire. The pilots fought with desperate courage, knowing most of them wouldn't survive. But every Krathian ship they distracted was one less shooting at the capital vessels. Greg's destroyers swept around the flanks, targeting the defensive stations with precision fire. The stations exploded one by one, their crews having no time to respond to the fast-moving Clone Wars vessels. But the Krathian fleet adapted, redirecting ships to intercept the destroyers. Greg found himself surrounded, fighting for survival. Jake drove the Resolute forward like a spear aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. The Dreadnought's shields flared constantly under enemy fire, but the self-repairing hull held. Jake felt every hit through his neural link to the ship, experiencing the damage as if it were his own body. Victoria Cross's combat instincts guided his commands, but he fought to maintain his own judgment. The Worldbreaker waited at the center of the formation, massive and seemingly invincible. Its weapons could destroy planets, and its shields were designed to withstand fleet-level bombardment. 50 capital ships surrounded it in a protective sphere, their overlapping fire creating a wall of destruction no ship could penetrate. "We'll never get through that," the Resolute's tactical officer said, fear creeping into his voice. Jake studied the formation and saw what Victoria Cross would have seen: a pattern, a weakness. The defensive sphere was too tight, the ships too close together. They were protecting the Worldbreaker, but also limiting their own maneuverability. "All ships concentrate fire on Section 7 of the defensive sphere," Jake ordered. "We're going to punch through." The rebel fleet focused their weapons on a single point in the Krathian formation. The sustained bombardment overwhelmed the defenders' shields, and ships began to crack under the assault. The Resolute pushed through the gap, its massive hull absorbing incredible damage, but the cost was terrible. One of Greg's destroyers exploded, its reactor breached by enemy fire. A Krathian missile salvo crippled Christine's carrier, Infinite Dawn, forcing it to retreat. The second dreadnought lost main power and went dark, drifting helplessly in space. The Resolute broke through the defensive sphere, alone and badly damaged. The Worldbreaker loomed before them, its weapons charging to fire. Jake knew they had one chance. The Dreadnought's main cannon could penetrate the Worldbreaker's shields, but only at point-blank range. They would have to ram the enemy vessel. "All crew to escape pods," Jake ordered. "Abandon ship." "Sir, the neural link," his tactical officer protested. "If you disconnect now, the ship's AI won't be able to coordinate its systems." Jake understood. Someone had to stay linked to guide the Resolute in its final moments. He had known this moment might come. Victoria Cross's memories had shown him similar sacrifices. Commanders who gave their lives to ensure victory. "Everyone leaves." "That's an order," Jake said firmly. "I'll stay linked until the last moment." The crew evacuated while Jake remained on the bridge, alone with the ship's AI. The Resolute accelerated toward the Worldbreaker, its damaged engines screaming. Krathian fire tore into the hull, but the Dreadnought's self-repair systems worked overtime to keep it moving. Then Christine's voice crackled over the communication system. "Jake, we found something in the Worldbreaker's systems. The Krathians didn't conquer Earth just for resources." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, his hands flying over controls as he guided the Resolute through a storm of enemy fire. "The clone technology. That's why they came. They've been preventing species across the galaxy from developing artificial population growth. The Empire maintains control by limiting how many soldiers any race can field. But Clone Wars technology could create billions of troops in months. It threatens their entire system of power." Jake felt the pieces clicking together. The Krathian Empire hadn't just conquered humanity. They had been trying to eliminate an existential threat to their dominance. And now Jake was about to destroy their command center using the very weapons they feared. The Resolute was 5 kilometers from the Worldbreaker when Jake made his decision. He activated the ship's communication systems and broadcast on all frequencies, Krathian and human alike. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Rebellion," he announced. "The Krathian Empire conquered us because they feared what we could become. They saw our clone technology and knew it could threaten their control over the galaxy. But we're not here to threaten anyone. We just want our freedom." He transmitted data showing the Clone Wars vessels' full capabilities, including the cloning systems that could produce unlimited soldiers. Every Krathian ship received the information, saw exactly what humanity could do if pushed to desperation. We have the power to field armies that would never stop coming, Jake continued. We could turn every human into a weapon, clone endless soldiers and burn our way across your empire. But we won't, because that path only leads to destruction. The Resolute was 2 kilometers from the Worldbreaker now. Jake could see the enemy crew through viewports scrambling to respond to his broadcast. Here's our offer. Withdraw from human space. Recognize our sovereignty. Let us rebuild in peace. If you do this, we'll destroy the clone production facilities ourselves. We'll prove we're not the threat you fear. Jake transmitted the shutdown codes for the Clone Wars cloning systems, sending them to every rebel ship and base. It was an act of trust and a gamble. He was showing the Crethians that humanity could choose restraint over vengeance. But if you refuse, Jake said quietly, then you'll see what happens when humans have nothing left to lose. The Resolute's self-destruct is armed. When it hits your command ship, the explosion will be visible from Earth.